Welcome to Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. My name is Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe. Our objective is to enthuse, inspire, energize, and empower entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs of all stripes here in BW and beyond. We do so by inviting these entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs into our makeshift studio. Sometimes we call them to the restaurant, sometimes we go to our studio, and we ask them to share their experiential knowledge, their experiences and their expertise. And we ask them as many questions as we can, aimed at empowering you also as a viewer. Hello dear viewer, dear listener, my name is Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe, your host of this great and wonderful show, Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. We always try to bring you impactful information, innovative information that you can apply in your life and use to make a difference out there. And in this regard, I've invited Koketso Molefi this time around to come and share on the workings of Bidpa. She will explain what Bidpa is all about, and she will share on their mandate, etc., so that we can see how it impacts the private sector and how you can position yourself in relation to their offerings. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Koketso. You are an economist, among other things, but I'd like you just to take the time to explain who Koketso is and what Koketso does.
Okay. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Mr. Mogobe. My name is Koketso Molefi. I am an economist at Botswana Institute for Development Policy Analysis, or Bidpa. As you've rightfully said, I am under the research unit Environment, Agriculture and Natural Resources. The key interest or key research interest in the unit revolves around energy economics, revolves around environment and issues of sustainable economic development. Prior to joining Bidpa, I started my career in banking. I was working for one of the commercial banks under the wealth management division. I hold a master's degree in economics from the University of Botswana, and currently I'm into capacity building. I'm doing an MBA in energy and sustainability with the University of Cumbria in UK.
Okay. I think the starting point for me would like to know what BIDPA stands for, literally what the acronym stands for, and what it does.
So BIDPA stands for Botswana Institute for Development Policy Analysis. BIDPA was established by the government of Botswana as an independent trust and started its operations as a non-government Policy Research Institute in 1995, being the key player in the national policy formulation. The Institute's core mandate is centered around socio-economic research, policy analysis, and capacity building. We are able to undertake this through what we term as demand-driven research work or consultancy work on behalf of all our stakeholders, which range from government ministries, parastatals, as well as international bodies and development partners such as the World Bank, UNICEF, UNDP, and so forth.
What about the private sector? My interest is mainly for entrepreneurs in the private sector. How do you interact with us, and what do you do for us?
We've had just a few interactions with the private sector currently, because mainly our job is centered only on the government for now, but not meaning we don't have the ability or the capacity to be able to interact further with the private sector. So we've done just a bit of work with the private sector, mainly centered around research or providing policy analysis on their behalf.
Okay. Is Bidpa a creature of statute? If so, what statute is that, and what mandate is set out in that statute, that piece of legislation?
Bidpa, as I've already said, was an act of parliament and was set up as an independent trust, mainly to advise government on policy issues and provide policy direction to the government of Botswana.
Okay. And what is the role as a policy research institute, specifically in relation to the economy? As an economist, how do you tailor make your research specifically for to deal with economic issues?
So core to BIDPA's mandate, as I've already said, is socio-economic research. That's mandate number 1. So BIDPA is able to contribute to the existing body of knowledge or literature through our supply-driven work or our publications, such as the policy briefs, our working papers, and so forth, whose recommendations results in policy debates, instills new ways of thinking, as well as in some instances leads to creation of new policies. BIDPA also continues to lead in public forums and provide policy analysis on key national activities such as the budget speech, the State of Nation address, as well as the general elections. Over the years, the Institute has also been able to provide policy analysis and provide policy direction to the government through these various publications that I've already mentioned.
And how long have you been in BIDPA, and how long has it been in existence itself?
I've been in BIDPA, this is my 4th year in BIDPA now, and it has been in existence since 1995.
Okay, that long, eh?
That long.
And are you able to tell us its key achievements, specific, tangible results that it has achieved for government and for the economy?
As for key achievements that BIDPA has done, I'll jump again a bit. I wanted to talk more on consultancy later, but I've already mentioned that we do most of our work for our stakeholders or on behalf of our stakeholders to provide policy analysis. Our recent project is one that we did for SIDA, whose recommendations led to the revision of the new finding guidelines by the agency, which were launched last year by His Excellency the President. We've also done some work on behalf of SIPA.
Before you leave that one,
Yeah.
what were your recommendations and what were the changes that were put into effect as a result of your work?
The study on SIDA was mainly to evaluate the manufacturing sector in Botswana. So key points of the study was to look at exactly what is the need in the manufacturing sector in Botswana. What are the issues, key challenges that the sector is faced with, be it financial, be it human capital, be it any other issues that they were faced with. So our key recommendations were centered around making it easy for entrepreneurs or small medium enterprises to enter the banking sector, to be able to have access to credit and so forth, and also to provide capacity to the agency to be able to have its human capital, have the ability to serve the entrepreneurs in the way that they're supposed to serve them.
And what are the changes that you put into effect that government embraced?
Well, the government has recently, through the new funding guidelines, provided an ability for them to be able to have access mainly to the banking sector based on their different categories. And I think that for them was the biggest thing, because finance, as we all know in Botswana, has been a biggest challenge in the small enterprises.
But I've heard entrepreneurs complain that SIDA is still not user-friendly. You are asked to provide information and documentation in installments and incrementally. So, and there are those who go so far as to say that it's even more difficult to get funding. What do you say?
I think that is for SIDA to continue engaging with their clients and try to be more solution-driven in that regard.
Okay. Yeah. Now, going back to BIDPA as a policy research institute in the economy, in the 15 years that you've been in existence, is it 15 years or 20? You said 20. You started
from
when?
95.
So it's roughly 25 years. So in this, or 26 years, in this time, what would you say has been the biggest change in the economy that you've seen as a result of your intervention?
To your point earlier on how Bidpa tries to be more friendly to the national economy, I've already mentioned that we provide policy analysis to our stakeholders, one of them being the government of Botswana. Bidpa has been engaged in the review of some existing policies for the government of Botswana, policies such as the citizen economic empowerment, the incomes policy, as well as other policies, the Ipelegeng, and so forth. We've also had a chance to contribute to the national vision, Vision 2036 and Vision 2016. Even more, Bidpa continues to provide policy advice to the government. So as a policy institute, our role mainly is to advise government on policy direction, and then it's up to the government to see how far they can go in implementation of such.
So you have no role on the implementation side?
No, we just provide policy advice.
And you mentioned Ipelegeng. You know, a lot of people think of Dipapata when you think of Ipelegeng, you know, and people seem to believe that it hasn't been that effective. Has it? As a policy?
I think we still have a long way to go from policy side. Currently, it's one of the projects that we're trying to review, mainly the whole socio-economic programs in Botswana, from Ipelegeng, SHA, and so forth, to see whether there have been an impact on the intended beneficiaries, and how can the different sub-programs be better crafted to really be able to change the lives of an ordinary Motswana at home.
So it's a work in progress.
Currently what Bidpa is doing.
So it's a work in progress in that respect.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about what you know, where one can find the actual research. Where do you keep a body of work? Is there an archiving system? How does the public access your research and information?
In order to make Bidpa's output available, the Institute has within its premises what we call as the resource center, or the library, if you may put it, which houses all these publications that I've mentioned before. Over and above that, we have partnered with international content sharing platforms such as the Africa Portal, the World Economic Forum, as well as the British Library for Development Studies. Recently, Bidpa has also made footprint on social media, and we have made presence on Facebook. We have a Facebook page. We also have a Twitter account which shares just a bit of nuggets on what we do. But above everything, all our output is available in our website at www.bidpa.bw.
Okay. And how accessible is the library or that you have here? To the public or to entrepreneurs?
When it was established, it's very accessible, but recently, because of issues of COVID, it's very limited. You can just lodge in what you request from the library, and if we're able to source it, we are. But we try to encourage all our stakeholders to go rather to the click side and have access to soft copies.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, we're talking about the current situation in terms of consultancy work, demand-driven work, as you say. What current projects, what type of consultancies are you currently dealing with? And any tangibles? You know, when you talk to entrepreneurs, they want to talk things which are practical, not so academic.
Yeah. Well, currently, as I've already mentioned, we are doing an evaluation of socio-economic programs in Botswana. We are also currently reviewing the Agriculture Credit Guarantee Scheme. Bidpa is also, as the national economy is moving towards being knowledge-based, we are heavily engaged in a project called Transforming Botswana's Economy Towards Knowledge-Based Economy, which on it or upon its finalization, we plan to advise government on how each sector of the economy can be better positioned to be able to reach that goal. Yeah.
Now, insofar as our efforts to, as a middle income country, to become, are we trying to be a high income country? what is BIDPA's role and what research are you working on to help us realize that goal and to drive us towards the 2036 goal as well in terms of Vision 2036?
The country is trying to move towards being knowledge-based. It's also trying to move towards being export-led. So I believe this major project towards moving towards knowledge-based economy, because it has different aspects of how each sector in the economy feeds into the bigger platform of knowledge-based. I believe I can't dwell much into it in terms of how far and what the recommendations are around, but it's going to provide government with enough knowledge and information for them to be able to do that.
And I mentioned 2036. Do you have any direct workings having to do with, you know, we some of the pillars we moved from 2016 to 2036. Do you have any involvement in that work?
Currently, there's a task force within Bidpa that sits on that board that advises on Vision 2036, on other different, the transformational agenda. And because most of our work is centered around providing advice and not really interfacing with the client or interfacing with what the government's bigger role is, we try to remain within providing advice, and the implementation stops with them.
Don't you think the government would be better served by you interfacing a bit more so that whatever you had in mind can be practicalized, can be implemented and brought to fruition?
I think that's a that's a thing for the future, but it's a welcome suggestion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I think there was a time, if I'm not mistaken, when government had an implementation entity which was headed by the late Moses Lekaukau. It was an effort by government then to recognize that implementation is a problem. It has to be pushed and driven.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to that agency. Is it still in existence?
Which agency is that?
The implementation
agency
that was headed by Rele Gaugao, whose job was it to try and implement some of these policies?
To push the implementation.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not aware of it.
I don't know whether you are aware of it at all.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's pivot to something else. Let's talk about what it takes to be an employee in Bidpa. I get the impression that a lot of people there are super educated, you know, master's degrees and PhDs. I'm saying this because I happen to mingle with some of you as our tenants here in Mogobe Plaza. Yeah. Do you have to be that super educated to be part of Bidpa?
In terms of capacity building in Bidpa, and capacity building is one of our core mandate, Bidpa continues to invest in its human capital. Currently, we have 5 people who are away on PhD training. Besides that, the institute tries to train its employees through long-term and short-term training, depending on their training needs. Currently in-house, we have about 6 PhD holders.
Wow. And
the rest of the researchers, all of the researchers that are there, the entry level for research is a master's degree, either in economics or in any other thing that is relevant to the institute. Further to that, in terms of capacity building as a whole, the institute also tries to provide capacity to other policymakers in order to drive personal development and so forth. So we've provided capacity for different policymakers such as parliamentarians and other public officers.
Tell me a bit about that. We're very big here in Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom on personal development. What is Bidpa doing and how are they interacting with the public in that regard?
Normally, we provide a call of interest for different organizations.
What does that mean?
Mainly,
call of interest?
Yes. So normally we identify the need in different stakeholders. Specifically, we've had more impact with working with people in the academia, the universities and so forth. So we have this arm of training university students either on research or any other stakeholders that want to be trained on anything that we have skills on. So BIDPA's door is always open to provide any form of capacity.
So then you'd approach Parliament yourselves, or how does it work?
Normally we can approach them after seeing the need, but it has been precedence that they may come to us and say, we need training on 1, 2, 3, are you able to do this for us?
Okay.
Yeah.
So my original question about whether you have to be really super brainy to work for BIDPA remains. I think the answer is yes. Talking to maybe that youngster out there, someone who might be interested in joining you, what does it take?
It takes a master's degree for a researcher, entry level.
In the minimum?
In the minimum, yes. But we've had people come to BIDPA for industrial attachments, for internship and so forth. Those, the institute is able to accommodate and provide capacity to in that regard. Even though for you to be a fully fledged BIDPA employee, especially on the research side, you have to have a minimum master's degree.
Okay. What about career progression in BIDPA? What are the prospects? Is it something that you'd encourage young, bright students to be looking forward to being part of?
I would definitely say yes. I am one of the people who have been privileged to be part of the institution that fully supports my career progression. As an employee of BIDPA, as a researcher in BIDPA, you have the opportunity to go even beyond for PhD holder, for PhD training, whether through the institute or through outside. My current MBA in energy and sustainability is fully sponsored by the institute. In terms of progression within, as per the norm with other organizations, there are different levels that you have to reach, or different key performance areas that you have to reach in order to progress within the institute. And I think I don't have a problem with the way it is crafted currently.
Okay. A conversation like this would not be complete without us talking about COVID. So what are you doing on COVID? What research are you involved with in relation to the elephant in the room, as it were, the COVID situation which we're in the middle of? Yeah.
So BIDPA, as I've already mentioned, tries to always keep in touch with what's going on in the economy. Currently, because we have different research agendas in BIDPA, if I may go a little bit more into that. As an institution, we've recently established a new strategic focus for the next 5 years. The strategic plan tries to cover what is currently going on in the economy. As a result, the institute has prioritized and identified key 5 research areas. One of them being environment, agriculture, and natural resources. That's one. That's the unit I'm in. We also have another unit on trade, industry, and private sector development. We have another unit on human and social development. We have another one on governance and administration, and the last one being on macroeconomic and development. So all these form a foundation or key focus areas of our research. As you've already asked on COVID, different units tend to play different heads in terms of trying to address what's currently going on in the economy. So we are currently have a unit that is specializing in doing research around COVID, how it impacts the global economy, how it impacts the national economy of Botswana, and how the economy can go further in trying to deal with the challenges that COVID has brought about. Yeah.
But in terms of that research, what are the indications? I mean, to what extent, as an economist, you might have your own views on this. To what extent has the economy shrunk? What is the outlook? When are we going to turn the corner? I'm sure as researchers, you do think about these things.
COVID has hit us hard, mostly from the tourism sector. We've had an ultimate decline in our tourists coming in the country, and that has had trigger effects on the people who are the employment within the tourism sector. It has also impacted different households very severely. We've seen that most of our economy is dependent on the creative sector. and the lack of any action on the creative sector has severely impacted different households. So as far as the economic outlook is concerned, we are very hopeful that the vaccine will do what it's supposed to do. More over and above that, we hope that it will be able to cover all of us, or at least to be able to achieve the herd immunity, so that the economy can be able to open up and we get back to what we are supposed to do.
And does it look like we're going to turn the corner anytime soon when you look at economic indicators?
I am quite hopeful. I am quite hopeful from what is currently happening from the task force of COVID. And if the time now all I want is the vaccine and have some form of hope so that the economy can fully open, but with a different ways of trying to get back. Obviously, we're going to have to go back slowly until we fully open the economy.
And you say that there's already a team within Bidpa that is focused almost exclusively on COVID issues?
Yes, they serve on the National Transformation Agenda, which then is part of COVID.
I'm sure the economy as a whole is super anxious to find out what their research produces, what comes out of that particular unit. How soon can we expect to hear from them?
I'm hopeful that the report will come out soon, but the report currently that is used by the National Transformation Agenda team is one of the inputs that Bidpa has had on during the last lockdown. So far, that's the only output that is available, I believe, on the internet, on the transformation agenda. And any other output, I'm hoping it will be available soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I will also want to touch on a thing called the Africa Continental Trade Agreement. Are you familiar with that agreement, which came into effect at the beginning of this year, an effort to open up Africa for trade? Is it something that Bidpa also looks at? Is any parts of Bidpa look at that document or that infrastructure?
As I've already said, in another unit, but Bidpa as a structure have people who are more conversant with issues of trade, issues of intercontinental integration and so forth. Yeah.
Because I was going to ask you whether you have any insights as to when exactly Botswana is going to ratify AFTA, because I've been talking to the folks at the Ministry of Trade, and they said around June, and I was really curious to find out whether you have any thoughts as to how it's going to impact the larger economy.
Okay, I think for that we are going to have to call one of our top economists, as you rightfully said from the start, who deals mostly with issues of trade and industry.
Okay, all right. What role does the Institute play in personal development, not just of its employees, of other stakeholders? I know you mentioned parliamentarians, but I think the biggest need would perhaps be, across the civil service and, in institutions of higher learning like UB and so on. So what role do you play there?
Currently, our role is mostly on providing capacity for employees or the few stakeholders that we've had a chance to engage with. I believe that there's still a chance to explore more, to also have different collaborations with different institutions over and above the ones that are in the academia, so that we can encourage knowledge sharing within the economy, especially that Bidpa is so heavy on, like you rightfully said, employees who are who are very high level in terms of their career and their education. So I believe we can do more. Currently, though, it's still a bit slow.
Yeah. I mean, personal development as a concept, the idea that you're not restricted to what you're learning at school, the idea that you are engaged in lifelong learning and you keep learning and acquiring new information. Do you think that there's a shift, speaking as a Botswana, Botswana embracing personal development in general?
I share different views. If you asked me this question a year ago, I would have said no. But currently, as a result of COVID, one of the positives of COVID, I've seen a lot of people now wanting to further develop themselves, either through online courses that were available during COVID, especially during the lockdown. I've been one of the people who have been able to do through the lockdown, because most of us didn't know what to do with ourselves during the lockdown. I've been one of the people who have continuously searched the internet and looked for things that I can do in order to capacitate myself better. So I believe the uptake of Botswana in general recently has been one on the high side.
Okay, so there's a positive that has come out of COVID that you see. Okay. I talked about the national vision, the 2036. I want you to talk about the BIDPA mandate and the vision specifically, and how the two are aligned exactly.
In terms of our alignment to the national vision, I've already said that the Institute recently identified key 5 research areas.
That you mentioned that, yeah.
Yes, which form a main focus of our research agenda. So all these different units in their research interest try to feed in the bigger vision for prosperity for all, for the country. And I believe that BIDPA continues to be relevant in that regard and provide evidence-based policy analysis. And it is through evidence-based policy analysis that we will be able to review existing policies and ultimately be able to achieve our long-term vision of prosperity for all.
Okay. Is BIDPA totally independent from government except for funding? I mean, they are not a parastatal as such, are they an independent body? Can you explain to me that aspect of BIDPA?
We are a totally independent research institute. However, because of our dealings mostly with the government, it may appear that we are a part of government. But the only aspect that mostly is heavy from the government side is the funding. However, we undertake our research as independently as possible. Even in our engagement with them, we really do our work and then provide recommendations to them for them to implement, for them to make use of what we give them.
Okay, so there's independence there. And then with regard to bigger players like Botswana, the bigger players in the economy, what is the relationship, what is the interface, what's the interchange between BIDPA and yourselves?
The furthest we've gone with bigger players in the economy, one of them being Botswana, has been work that we had done on the manufacturing study that we did on behalf of SIDA. Other than that, if there is no forum that BIDPA is invited to speak, if there is any other engagement, we hardly ever interact with any other people.
You currently have an acting CEO. When will we have a permanent CEO? What's going on in that area?
We are hopeful that we will complete that aspect.
Okay, because I happen to believe that your acting CEO is fully capable. So if it were up to me, I'll just make her the CEO.
In agreement.
Okay, all right. Now, this is part of the show where you grab the crystal ball and look at the future and really explain how you see BIDPA the next 5, 10, 15 years in terms of where you see yourself, B, how you see the larger organization going forward.
I think in the next 5 years or 10 years or so, I still see BIDPA as a relevant policy institute that provides policy analysis to the government. Currently, the country is trying to move towards being knowledge-based, and I believe that what we're currently working on would rubber stamp the need to have a policy research institute. I'm hopeful also that through our interactions with government and our recommendations based on different things that we're doing, the implementation side will also try to instill and reassure the public of what really the role of BIDPA is on the national economy. So I'm hopeful that on the implementation side, we'll see more traction from the government. Even in our interaction with them, we will try to emphasize that.
You do remember that is it a month or so ago, the government spoke of a pivot and a repositioning, and there was a big speech that the president made talking about a reset. What is Bidpa's takeaway from that speech, and do you think that Botswana are going to be to respond to that effort at reset? Specifically, if I understood the president's speech, he was saying that the aspects of self-sabotage that are there that we need to actually move away from. There were aspects that related to bottlenecks within the civil service. I'm just paraphrasing that speech, but the effect of the whole speech was that there's need to reset and to change our mindset. I want you to talk about that, the mindset issues.
In terms of the mindset issues, I think Ghana as a country has gone through a lot, and COVID has exposed a lot of, if I may say, inefficiencies within our current economy. So in his speech, His Excellency, when he was talking about researching, I think more than anything, he was trying to encourage Botswana to have a positive mindset and always be encouraged to look further beyond the current challenges so that we can come out of this whole mess, if I may call it.
Because he said it's a mindset that has dominated us for 30 years. He was talking 3 decades.
Yes.
It wasn't just around COVID.
Yes, but his main kick around that speech, I believe, was to say, you might be going through this right now, but as a person, even as a nation, you should always be looking forward for the next day and believe that tomorrow will be better. And above all, I believe Bidpa is always trying to stay aligned to what the vision, the national vision that the country has, and will try and as much as possible to try and support the government in that regard.
So do you think the mindset is shifting or will shift?
Mindset is a different thing. It's a very difficult thing. I believe with time, because most of us, we want to see traction in certain things that we have issues with. So so far as mindset is concerned, I think it's a long-term thing. But we as people, we also need to tell ourselves that, you know what, as long as we are still here and we have a leader, we believe in his leadership and so forth.
Okay. This is where now you get to ask me a question. Do you have any question for me as the host of Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom?
I think I would like to first start saying that thank you so much for inviting Bidpa to be part of this platform. I believe it will serve as a basis for people to know what we do as an institute out there. In terms of my question to you, I just wanted to find out what motivated you to start this series or this nugget of wisdom, and what is the intention behind it? How accessible to it? What is it to the rest of the people? And what is your vision around it?
Well, I noticed that, and you know, I've answered this question before, but let me give you this version of the answer. I've noticed that we generally work in silos as an economy, as a people, and I've noticed that there's not enough opportunities for cross-pollination of ideas, interchange of ideas between different stakeholders, and I realized that part of it is that we're not showcasing the talent that we have. We're not exposing entrepreneurs. We're not exposing organizations such as Bidpa. And, you know, I talk of both entrepreneurs, people working within organizations, and entrepreneurs, people out there. The need for that kind of cross-pollination, as I described it. So this is a platform which is intended to expose them. We have those 4, you know, if you like, sayings, which is to energize, to enthuse, to empower, and to inspire entrepreneurs. And I happen to believe that entrepreneurs are the people who are going to make a difference. You come up with the policy ideas, government creates the policies and the framework, but ultimately you and government need to create a platform or rather an environment for the private sector to thrive. So the more we expose information, such as what Bidpa does, the more we interact with the private sector, the better. So that is the purpose of this platform, among many other purposes, as we try to empower the public So I hope I've answered your question.
You have extensively so.
Okay, all right. Would you care to look at that mirror? Why did I say mirror? That camera, and talk to that viewer, and have a few last words of encouragement, concluding ideas around what we've discussed.
I think in my last week as a young economist at one of the key policy research institutes in Botswana, I would like to say now more than ever, the BIDPA remains relevant in providing evidence-based policy analysis and in trying to assist in reaching the national vision of Vision 2036, in it being prosperity for all. Over and above that, as a young Botswana in the country who's privileged enough to be working in these current times, I would like to say continue in your personal development, continue hanging in there and believing that tomorrow will be better. Thank you so much.
Okay. Now tell them how they can access Bidpa. Where are you located physically? Where they can get all this information on social media, wherever?
To make BIDPAs output available, I've already said this. We have within our premises a resource center which houses all the publications that the institute has.
They don't know where your premises are.
The premises of BIDPA currently are in Mogobe Plaza, first floor in the CBD. I hope I did justice. We've also made presence on Instagram, Facebook, as well as Twitter. And all our publications are also available on our website at www.bidpa.bw.
How do they reach Koketso Molefi personally in case they want to develop this conversation further?
Koketso Molefi is a researcher at Bidpa under the unit Environment, Agriculture and Natural Resources. As you walk into Bidpa reception and say, may I see the natural resource economist in this premises, they will direct you to Koketso. My direct line is 361-7756, or my email address is kmolefi@bidpa.bw.
Okay, it remains for me to thank you. You've been an excellent guest. You've answered, very, very openly, and you've been generous with information. I threw a few, curves at you. What do they call them? And you answered very beautifully. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
All right.
41 minutes.
Okay. Okay.